Annie Haggar, partner with Norton Rose Fulbright. Thanks very much for joining us on My Security TV and here at the National Press Club.
It's my pleasure.
We've just had you on stage, AU Cyber and AU Cloud, talking about the new cybersecurity bill and sort of a wave of legislation coming through, some dating back to 1988 with the Privacy Act and the like. And it's great to see legal representation rising in cybersecurity. I think it's been some time coming, but that compliance nature, as you mentioned, legal and security are coming hand in hand, particularly for enterprise. You also, I understand, talking to government, the engagement with government and giving that industry advice. What's your current observations and how much of an impact this cybersecurity bill will actually have on industry? And not so much an impact, but potentially a burden?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. So I think I'm a big supporter of the cybersecurity bill and the legislative package that goes with the bill, because there's a number of different components. We already had the privacy reforms that had been under long review and then had been tabled just earlier in the year. Then we've had this cybersecurity package of legislation, which includes a new cybersecurity bill. It includes amendments to the Security of Critical Infrastructure bill, and it includes amendments to the Intelligence Services Act. They're a really important package of legislation, and in fact the bill itself, the cybersecurity bill, is a turning point for Australian legislation in cyber, because it's going to be a place where the government can introduce new requirements, new legislation, and to tweak things as needed as the threat landscape changes, as the security threats that Australian organisations and individuals face change, whereas previously we didn't have a natural home for a lot of the things that the government needed to do. So it's a really important foundational piece of legislation. Some of it will introduce a burden on businesses, but that burden is being very carefully considered and balanced with the needs for the information that is going to be requested or for the changes. So the two things that in the bill that are potentially burdensome on business are, the first is the new security standards for what we call Internet of Things devices, so anything that can be connected to the internet. Now, what the bill's introducing is requirements for those internet connectable devices and things to meet a minimum security standard. That standard's going to be modelled on the UK so that we don't have inconsistencies and leave ourselves as on our own in the world with our security requirements. This is really important. It's like knowing that when you're buying something at the store that it's going to do the things that it's supposed to do. It's going to keep you safe. As a parent, we wouldn't walk into a shop and buy a car seat unless we knew the one we were buying was going to keep our kids safe. And so all car seats sold in Australia have to meet minimum security standards. Bike helmets are the same. This is just like that. It's putting a minimum set of requirements in for products sold or supplied in Australia to be secure. And that means individuals going out and buying something from the shop know that it's going to be secure to a minimum standard if they activate the security controls. And that's really going to be an immediate lift to the security of Australians using those devices. Because we can think about the things that are connected to the internet these days. The fridge. Our TVs have been smart for a while. Microwaves, the washing machine.
Yes.
All of these are potentially vulnerabilities in your home that enable threat actors to attack you and steal your data. Each of these needs to be secured. So the second thing that's going to be potentially burdensome in the Act is the requirement to report ransom payments. So at the moment, the government thinks that about only 1 in 5 ransom payments are reported. And the reason why it's important for us to have a reporting requirement for ransom payments is that it allows the government to start collecting data. There's been a lot of questions about whether the payment of ransoms should be made illegal. But at the moment, the government says, look, we just don't have the data to know whether or not that's a sensible policy, whether that would cause more harm than it's worth. And so we need to start collecting more information before we set policy, like making a ransom payment illegal. Now, what they're doing is they're requiring anyone who runs a business that turns over $3 million or more to provide a report in a specific format with specific content to the government within 72 hours if they pay a ransom. Now, that means you've already, it is a short time frame, and that could be burdensome. An organisation who's been hit by a ransom attack has had a pretty rough couple of days. They've made a very serious decision to pay a ransom to protect the organisation they work for and the data that it holds, and they then have to report to the government. But the government is trying to make it as easy as possible. and they are trying not to be overly burdensome with the balance of the data that they feel is really critical to collect in order to then make further policy.
It does sound like because you mentioned the legal sort of framework much like a jigsaw. I was thinking like a bowl of spaghetti at the moment because, I feel like we're playing catch up on a lot of this stuff that should have come through. And I mentioned just with our previous interview with the AIIA on business is we have an overlay of AI emerging rapidly in this space as well. So it's getting businesses' head around that, as well as reacting and responding to new legislation, which potentially should have been with us 10 years ago or emerging 10 years ago. And as you say, there's still some uncertainty how it's all going to lay and potentially fall. I think from a legal viewpoint, the legal fraternity, do you find that there's enough expertise in this space? I do see it's rapidly emerging, but again, there's an opportunity here for the security sector and the legal sector to come together, but there's a bit of uplift on both required as terms of the new obligations, the legal obligations for the security industry to understand.
That's right.
And we need the legal fraternity to give that advice, which is generally say nothing and don't give anything away, whereas cybersecurity we need to be sharing information.
That's right, and that's a natural tension for lawyers because our jobs are to advise our clients on the law and on the risk. And particularly when you are a in-house lawyer, so you work inside business and you advise that business, your job is just to protect that business, to ensure that business complies with the law and to ensure that that business makes decisions based on risk and to help manage that risk. Lawyers have always got two masters though. We are required we owe our first duty to the court and to the upholding of the law, and then we owe our second duties to our clients. And so it's actually an interesting fit with security because with security there is a community view. There is a community consideration about what is in the interests of Australia and the broader business community, which we have to balance. Now, as lawyers, we always have to make sure that we are giving the best advice for our clients, and that's why some of the things that the government's been doing with its limited use requirements and also some specific things on protecting legal professional privilege in the bill.
Yes.
That are there designed to help lawyers be able to give advice that it is okay to share with government because it shouldn't undermine their defensibility in any future litigation or regulatory interests. Your question around are there enough lawyers in this space yet? It's an emerging area. I've been working in security for around 10 years now. There certainly weren't many lawyers in the space then. We are growing in number, which is fantastic, and people are coming from different backgrounds. So there's a lot of lawyers who have worked on insurance claims resulting out of cyber breaches who are now working in the cyberspace because they're dealing with a lot of cyber insurance claims. Yep. Privacy is another natural one. We've had the only law we've had about cyber breaches really has been around the Privacy Act.
Yeah.
So a lot of lawyers have excellent privacy expertise, are now advising clients on more broad cyber issues coming from a privacy background. And then there's people like myself who come from a real technology law background, and we've been working very closely with technology industry and helping the security industry go to market.
Yeah.
Because did you know that a lot of the security services that are provided are illegal unless they're done right? So you go, hang on, we want to go and hack into our clients' systems and potentially say we're hacking into a bank. They want us to move money or try to steal money. Why? Because they want to see if the hackers can do it. Because if the good guys can do it, then the hackers can do it. And the lawyers go, hang on, you want to hack into someone's systems and steal some money? Pretty sure all of that's illegal. So we have to set up structures for security services providers to do this legally and safely without creating additional risk. So that's the background that I've come from. It's a super fun space to work in. But we are trying to grow the next generation of cyber lawyers, and that starts at university and training them up.
Well, look, it was one of those things, I wanted to try and keep this short and brief, but it's a big, big topic, and I think a national significant topic as well. But Annie Haggar from Norton Rose Fulbright, you're the partner on cybersecurity as well, a specialist. Thank you very much for joining us on My Security TV. We'll hopefully have you on again as this emerges and the bill comes through, becomes legislation, and we can actually see how it's enacted. But thank you very much for joining us on My Security TV.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.